Did you know that if the wallpaper or the paint in your restaurant is soft, that you're more likely to order more wine? Today on Roundtable Perspective, Dr. Subhash Jha joins me in examining service cues and haptics. Welcome to the Roundtable Perspective. I'm your host, Tom Roach. I'm joined by my guest today, Subhash Jha. We're going to talk about haptics and consumer cues that are used in stores and in trade shows. Dr. Jha has two PhDs in marketing, one from the United States, one from India. He's taught in both countries, and he's here to discuss some of those things that might be manipulating your choices when you're in the store. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, and I'm very excited to share my research and as well as academic background with the group today.
Thank you. Dr. Jha has published several articles on this, and he's working on a book right now. But let's explain what we're talking about first. So your area of marketing, your main interest is what's called service cues, right? What do we mean by a service cue?
So let me explain. I would not say exactly the service cues. So what I would say, when you interact with a service provider, there are several nonverbal cues which can influence your behavior.
Sure.
For example, the way the service provider is looking at you can influence whether you should buy that service or not. So I'm saying there are several nonverbal cues which are actually being created as the haptic cues. So when I say haptic cues, imagine a business card.
Yes.
Business card is given by a service provider to you, and business card is very flimsy. Like you felt that this is the first time I am interacting with a service provider, and the business card is so flimsy. Yes. So are you going to make a perception based on this particular nonverbal cues? I would say yes, definitely.
I would. I'd say cheap card. I don't want the service. Now, let's define haptic for our viewers here. So it comes from the Greek word, I believe, right?
Correct.
And it has to do with touch.
Yes.
So if you're concerned with haptics, you're concerned with the weight of something and maybe the texture of it, right?
Weight, texture. That is also coming as hardness, and the fourth element is the temperature. So I have not looked into the role of temperature, but I have looked into these three different properties of the haptic in my research. In one of my dissertation work is also related to the haptic cues.
And so we're all concerned about what's on the business card, right? But you're saying we need to be concerned about the paper that the card's printed on.
Exactly.
Because that's telling the person that we're giving the card to, it's telling them something about us.
Yes. Right? In Japan, the people are more sensitive, and they have started using the business card based on the hierarchy. So person who is the vice president would use a thicker card to communicate that he is more powerful.
Very good.
So there are many ways by which you can communicate your status or maybe your overall perspective to the consumers that you are belonging to a different strata. Let me tell you the example. I came to know about the Talbot retailer. So Talbot retailer is very famous, and their overall intention was to position their company on the warm aspect. Like warm. So they say that, okay, we are the warm company and we welcome the women more. I said, okay, what if the Talbot uses more soft cues, because soft is more related with the warmthness. Why? Because if you use the soft cues in the brochure or any element which are present in the retail environment can communicate that you are warmer than the competitor.
So the actual products that they're selling,
yes, actual
you would
products,
recommend that they make them, that you pick softer products, basically.
I would not exactly say to focus only on the products. So think about a shopping cart.
Yes.
And we were planning to conduct a study in Sweden where we are trying to remove or change the shopping cart handle. Imagine a shopping cart handle would be one is softer, another one is not softer, like hard.
Yeah.
Would you feel differently when you are in a shopping store? Because you are experiencing the shopping cart from the time you enter into the store and the time when you exit the store.
Yeah.
So can it influence your subconscious mind and you tend to buy more hedonic products? Because hedonic products are mostly related with that kind of consumption where you feel more softly oriented.
Yes. Okay, so a softer environment good for some stores, for other stores maybe a harder environment?
Yes, so let me give you another example. We are also working on some interesting aspects related to the restaurant service. So imagine in a restaurant, you go to a restaurant and you receive a menu. And if the menu comes with the hardness, because many times I have seen in many of the restaurants, they gave you the menu on the wood. So the wooden menu.
Yeah.
So if you have the wooden menu.
Or coated in hard plastic too, yes.
So it gives you some kind of weight perception.
Yes.
So does it get transferred in the kind of choices which you are going to make? So we made an assumption that when the people are having the soft experience in the menu, they are going to order more unhealthy product because they feel more comfortable in the environment because they are having the soft cues in their hand, and then they tend to take more risk, and therefore they go for the more wise products, which is more unhealthy products, which is so cool that a restaurant provider can nudge your behavior and change your behavior in a manner they want you to buy that particular product. I would say if you are focused more about the healthy kind of restaurant, then you should be very careful about choosing the haptic cues in the environment. You should focus more on the roughness. So roughness is more about the healthiest stuff. Think about any healthy product which we eat. So when we eat, our tongue is also going to test that particular product. So if it is rough, we think that it is more rough, so it is going to digest better. So it is more.
I didn't think of that though. So there's actually haptic cues that you're picking up in your mouth.
Yeah, that is also that.
Not just taste, but also.
Exactly, that we call it as the oral haptics. So my interest area at this point of time, I have also investigated the product haptics, but I have moved from product haptics to the retail haptics, which are present in the retail environment, and that is going to influence your behavior. For example, when you write when you sign while checking out, the pain can even influence your overall perception. And we are using that aspect even in the restaurant case. Then when you are going to write the tip amount, is that the pain which you are going to use is going to influence your tipping behavior.
So like if I want lots of tips, what kind of a pen? Should I give people a Mont Blanc pen to sign my tip with? Or?
My research says that you should use a pen which can give the soft sensation.
Really?
Then the customer is going to write more tip for you.
If I go out and spend too much money tomorrow, I can come home and I can tell my wife that it's not my fault. I was getting all these cues from the environment.
Yeah, you will not even be aware that this has happened with you. But we are testing it in the lab, in the field, and we are consistently finding this kind of result where the people are being manipulated by these kind of haptic cues.
So how do you test this? How do you run an experiment
So
for this?
when we run this particular experiment, so what I have done until now, in the first case, the business card case, which I told you, initially, actually, a couple of years back, like 4 years back, I started working on the business card, and I saw there is a huge variation in the kind of paper quality people can use in the business card. So I printed it and I tested it in my class first, that do the people perceive a service provider differently based on the business card, and I found the significant result. For the main experiment, for the main experiment after this particular pre-test, I have chosen 3 business cards. One was same thickness, but having the soft touch. So you can buy it at several platforms. So moose.com is the best which I can right now recommend. So there you can actually buy the soft touch card and the not soft touch card. So we are making the assumptions the people who are going to use the soft touch card will be perceived warmer. Another card we have bought was thicker. It was 32 points thick, and which is being used by many of the service providers. And that we said, when you use thicker card, it talks more about the performance and the competency of a service provider than the warmthness. So we used that card. And we also depicted the same business card on the computer screen, because there is no haptic sensation going on the computer screen. And in the control condition, there was no business card. And we have asked the people to evaluate the service provider just based on the business card and the scenario which we have presented. And we found the people have perceived the soft to be really warmer and thick card to be really the competent, more competent, which is so outstanding in terms of the kind of result which I have received. We investigated this further, and
so if I want a job as a security guard, I want to have a hard card, right?
Actually, when you go to have a kind of job where you think that the skill and the competencies are more important than the warmthness, you will actually produce the thicker card than the soft touch card.
But if I'm a counselor, then I might want to have a softer card, right, to let people know that I'm a warmer person. Yeah, very good.
we also investigated the same issue with the retail context. So what we have done, because there is huge variation in terms of the corporate image of a retailer.
Yeah.
So we wanted to know, is it that this kind of haptic cue is going to affect all kind of retailers? So we found it is more important for those retailers who are having the average corporate image. If you are having the high corporate image, probably these haptic cues may not have the same effect what we have observed in the average image retailer. So if you are having the average image, you should use really the better card. Otherwise, it is going to backfire you, and it is not going to help you in the long run.
So you call this retail design, and that covers what other things?
I was also thinking, which I have not yet done.
We talked about the sharpened cards, for instance, right?
One was
that's
the
a retail
card.
design issue, as opposed to being worried about the texture of the products. You're talking about the design of the store and the implements are in the store.
Correct.
So where else does this?
One of the backgrounds, let me tell you what the background I had.
Okay.
So I worked in the paint industry. After my MBA, I was working with Asian Paints. And while working with Asian Paints, I realized that many of the paint companies use the textured related paints on the wall. So if you use the highly textured paint, it can give you some kind of signal. There is a literature behind it. So I'm suggesting the retailers that they should be very careful about the kind of paints they use. So for example, they can use the rough paint and they can use the smooth paint. So on the wall, if it is very smooth, you are inducing the hedonic consumption, which many of the consumers are not actually willing to buy probably. Like, we wanted to test it in the wine store, or the people where they take actually the bar would be the best place where I can have this kind of testing.
Where people are buying wine.
So they can have the smooth paint on the wall.
Yeah.
And we are saying if you are having the smooth paint versus the rough paint, people are going to drink more wine if you provide the wine in that particular environment, because they feel very comfortable in the soft.
No, we're not saying that like everybody's going to drink more wine because of the paint. We're just saying that if you have 100 people, right?
In an average.
On the average, more wine will be consumed, right? Yeah, of course.
Exactly. Yeah. Because of the design of the environment. Right. So we are saying if there is a soft environment.
Because I could go into the restaurant and they could say, you know, would you like a bottle or a glass of wine? And I could feel the wall first and say, okay, I think I'm feeling like a bottle today, right?
You do not need to feel the wall. You would be surprised to know there are several.
I'm just kidding. Yeah.
there are several subtle cues which influences. So I was working with one of the restaurants in Memphis, which is a very 5-star kind of restaurant. Owner one time told us that he was observing some of the things which many of probably the restaurant service provider were not able to observe it.
Yeah.
At one event, the bartender has broken her leg, and because of that, she was not able to wear the hilly sandal. So she was wearing the very low heel sandal.
Yeah.
And what he was able to observe, that the same girl was serving the wine to the customers, but the tipping behavior has significantly reduced.
Because of her feet?
Because of not wearing the hilly sandal. That was the only change which has happened.
Interesting.
The same service provider told me that he changed that girl and asked another girl to wear the hilly sandal, and the tip behavior has reached to the same place.
Interesting.
So think about the subtle cues which can influence your behavior. Who knows, after one drink, probably people are in a high mood and they start giving more tip.
So, when we talk about this is a haptic cue still, right? We're talking about the paint. People aren't actually touching it. They're just observing that it's hard or soft, right? So we're talking about maybe a textured paint rather than a rough paint, right? As opposed to a glossy paint, right? That would, I think, in most people's terms, that might be how they would see those.
So very interesting. In the haptic case, haptic cues can be communicated to some extent by the visual also.
Yes.
So what does that mean? Temperature you will not be able to communicate. Temperature is also one of the haptic cues. But you will be able to communicate the hardness aspect or roughness aspect of the environment by the visual cues. But you will not be able to communicate probably the weight of this cup, because nobody knows by just looking at this weight what could be the weight of this particular cup. So one study which we are conducting, which 2 studies we already have at the online platform, where we are saying if you put the hand in the picture of a particular product, it will give you the signal about the weight of a product. So think about many of the online retailers these days are using the hand in the picture without knowing what kind of information this hand can tell you.
Yeah.
So you will see the speaker coming in the hand. So is it that they want to communicate that the speaker is light, therefore they want to put the hand inserted in the speaker? So that kind of a study I am right now exploring, and we are assuming that just inserting the hand in the picture will give you the definitive information about the weight aspect of a particular product.
Interesting. Now, you also look into the behavior of employees, I think, right? Can we talk about that a little bit?
Sure.
So, you know, like if an employee's overworked or not overworked, how does that impact people's perception?
So my focus was, from the beginning, was the interaction quality. So until now, what I have talked about, the interaction quality was related to the haptic cues. So when you interact with the haptic cues, which are present in the environment, how do you evaluate the service provider? What if the human beings who are interacting with you, as a consumer, you are interacting with an employee. If the employee is overloaded, does it have some effect on you? Is it going to have some kind of contagion effect on you? So if he's overloaded, probably he will not be able to fake the smile, and he will serve you, but he is serving you in a very tense mood.
Yeah.
Probably you will have a very, very dissatisfying experience in the service environment. And that is the issue which we have investigated. And we have seen when employees are overloaded, it also affects the sales outcome. So we have even the sales of those banks where we conducted the study, and we observed that affects first the customer orientation of the employee, and then it affects the interaction quality between the employee and the customer, and ultimately it is affecting the sales of a particular bank branches.
That's interesting. There used to be two very competitive department stores in Chicago, Carson Perry Scott and Marshall Field's. And Marshall Field's had a much higher customer satisfaction rating than Carson Perry Scott did. And so they did a test to see why that was. And one of the things they found out is that if you went into Carson's, they sent a woman into Carson's like 5 minutes before closing to try on dresses. And they, the clerks told her, sorry, we're closing, out of here, right? Went into Marshall Field's 5 minutes before closing. They let her try on dresses for 45 minutes. They waited, took their time with her, right?
Interesting.
And so they were building that reputation, right, with these kinds of cues that you're talking about, not just with the obvious things. What about pricing? You've talked about, you've researched, I know, pricing. There's certain cues that you give if you decide to charge $1.99 or $2, for instance, right? How does that work?
It is very interesting, and it is so fascinating that we have taken the behavioral economics perspective in my research. So I have investigated if there is a time pressure involved. Is it that you are going to behave differently with the discount a retailer is providing? So what happened?
So there's a relationship between
the
time
pressure
you have
and the discount.
So
one paper which we published in 2013 in Journal of Retailing has investigated that issue. Actually, we found it in 2010 when I was working at the University of Memphis. When we provided the time element that, hey, this discount is available only for today, people's perception towards the high discount has gone up, and it has happened because the skepticism towards that particular high discount has gone down. So people were very skeptical towards the high discount when the retailer provides it.
Right.
Because if you get 60% discount from a retailer, you might think that the product quality is not good, therefore retailer is giving the discount. Or retailer wants to get rid of the product, therefore they want to give you the discount. So skepticism was a mediator between the relationships which we have investigated. We said, can we have a way by which we can reduce the skepticism? So we inserted the time element, and we said, this discount is available only for today. And we found that we were able to reduce the skepticism towards that discount, and it worked. And it was so fascinating for a retailer to know. And therefore, you might have seen, I would not say that it is because of our research, but that time there were a lot of research which were being published on the time aspect. And retailers have started using the time cues in those pricing and the discount rates.
And it works. What about deciding what kind of price to put on something?
That would be difficult to say. Why?
Is there research on that? I mean,
so one of the product case which we have investigated was related to the pre-ordered product.
Okay.
So many times we have observed that retailers ask you to pre-order that product. So product is not available in the market, but you pre-order it and you get the instant discount, and the product will be probably available after 2 weeks or maybe 2 months. So many of the Kickstarter projects are like that. In the Kickstarter project, many of the investors ask you to invest, and that product will be available after 1 year and 2 years. So that was the idea which we have played with.
No, I would think that would be bad. I would think that would be negative.
But what has happened when the retailers have asked the people to bet or pre-order with the high discount has actually backfired the retailers. But it has worked only for those people who were having the present-oriented mindset. So the person who are living in the present time, because there will be a certain kind of people who live only the present time. Like they say that, okay, I want to live the today, I don't want to think about tomorrow.
Eat, drink, and be merry. Tomorrow we may die.
Right. So if you are targeting that kind of people, discount always works. But if you are targeting those people who are thinking more about the tomorrow, then it is very difficult for you to target those people with the discount. So we said, don't use the discount, use a different kind of products, which may be a gift for a particular pre-order product to induce those kind of consumers, because they are getting the one gift attached with a pre-order product. Therefore, many of the iPhone which came to the market, they have started using a specific gift attached to the iPhone.
Interesting.
And we published this work in 2017, which was so fascinating. At this point
of time, you made more money for Apple.
I don't know whether the Apple has seen our research or not, but we have started observing also this kind of phenomena in the market. At this point of time, I am working on a very fascinating issues with a couple of researchers, where we are examining, if I ask you that you are going to a store today versus 2 weeks, people have started putting more items in the 2 weeks condition. Then my co-researcher said, what if we ask them that you are making this kind of grocery purchase only once in 2 weeks? Because it might happen the people who are going today are thinking that they are just going today, they might again go after 2 weeks. So we made this also as a point, and we observed the people behaved in the same fashion when you are giving the 2 weeks time. And we've thought, and we are observing it in our data, that the people mindset has changed by just asking them to think about today versus 2 weeks. When it is a 2 weeks condition, they start thinking more about how many items they would like to have, because they don't want to miss anything in the 2 week situation.
So you're triggering a different thought process entirely, and it leads to a different conclusion. Yeah, that's interesting. I just wanted to branch out before we go and talk a little bit about what they're doing with Haptics online. And I know that this isn't your area especially, but I thought maybe you might want to talk about it a little bit. So they're trying to work vibrations into the cell phone, for instance. So when you're looking at some products, the cell phone vibrates at certain points and things like that. How far is that going to go? Where are we headed with this?
It is very interesting because I'm working with a person who was the pioneer in the haptic research. She was my co-chair in my dissertation work. She was the one who talked about haptic in marketing first time.
Really? Yeah. What's her name?
Joanne Peck. She is at University of Wisconsin-Madison.
Okay.
And she was my co-chair. I came to Wisconsin-Madison in 2015 because of her and started working on some of the. She had a work on the 3D visualizations and how a different kind of hands can give you a different kind of perception towards the product which you are evaluating on the online platform. So if the product is being depicted using the 3D pictures, is it that you are going to have a different kind of perception? She was also cautioning the online retailers that you should not work so hard to make the product so vivid that when the product really comes to in the hand of a consumers, they will be so dissatisfied because they probably had a high expectation that this product would look like this, but when it comes in the hand, probably the expectation has gone down and then it backfires. So she had a lot of work in that area, and I'm very fascinated, and I'm going to use some of her work and extend it further.
So, will we be looking at, temperature variations and things at some point? And
there is, like one of the things which we have observed, there may be a way by which a temperature will be communicated through your mouse or maybe a gloves, but it was not so economically feasible. Like you want to touch something, you wear the gloves and you will get that kind of sensations from the online platform.
Right.
But
I've seen that you put these gloves on, they've got sensors all over them.
So is it going to help you or not help you from a retailer's point of view? We are not yet sure. We are very early on that stage yet.
Yeah. So what else is coming?
So this is one phenomena which we think is very, very important. We are also working towards, can we have a way by which we can allow the consumers to think about the haptic qualities by giving some kind of cues? One of the cues which I spoke about was the hand. That hand can be communicative. So in the communication literature, hand has been used to communicate that this is the kind of sign which you should use.
Very good. And you know, we might all keep this in mind when we're shaking hands with people, right? They say you want to have a nice firm grip, and I think we've got a lot of evidence as to why that's the case. That's all the time we have on our program. I want to thank Dr. Subhash Jha for joining us today on Roundtable Perspective. I'm Tom Roach. See you next time.